goes on. Yeah, it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. Hot Odds LA. Back at it. Coming off last week with Icky Woods on. And now I had two guests bail on me. So it's solo time, kid. So I just popped freaking another pneumonia smelling salt and a couple more beers and ready to go. On the way here, we do this show from downtown LA, obviously, like I've talked about before. On the way here, and in about a 6-block walk, not even, maybe about 4 blocks, I see two guys about to go at it. One kid looks like he's freaking an extra from Slumdog Millionaire, stepping up to this guy who's obviously homeless, or homeless looking, with a big 2x4 in his hand, Hacksaw Jim Duncan style, squaring off with this guy, and pull up a stoplight. They're all sitting right there. And you got about 50 people filming the shit on their freaking phones. And nobody's stepping in and doing anything. You just drive it away. Park, go out, walk in the city, see a guy barefoot with an ankle, home arrest ankle bracelet, barefoot, walking around the streets, wandering around. I see a guy with a Michael Jordan Wizards jersey representing. And another homeless, right before I got in the studio, another homeless guy with the Randy Moss Patriots jersey, which I actually have one myself. I got from a buddy of mine who actually got it from a store that was bootlegging shirts. He stole it from him and gave me the shirt. Guy's sitting there, freaking the second biggest city in the country, bringing downtown, just madness everywhere you go. Speaking of madness, I'm addicted to sports. Unfortunately, I think if anybody is out there listening, my 15 listeners that has some kind of psychological practice, set up a psychological practice to wean men, middle-aged men, off of pro sports. It's unreal. Yesterday, I was supposed to work Charles Brown camp. Charles Brown was an offensive lineman. He's an offensive lineman for the Giants now, played for the Saints the last few years. Supposed to work his camp for free. I ditched out on it. Forget that. I stayed at home and watched the Bruins. 9 in the morning, the Boston Bruins, followed by 3 Game 7s I sat and watched. It's an addiction. But forget that. I'm not gonna go to Charles Brown camp and work that shit for free. And because Charles Brown's an NFL player, the NFL demands that anybody who works these camps has to watch a 45-minute video, which you can't stop and replay. You have to watch it one time or you don't get credit for it. You have to watch a 45-minute video on concussions and hydration safety. It's amazing how they pass this shit on to scrubs like myself, high school coaches that are looking to volunteer to have a camp, but you have to, they have to watch a 45-minute video before you're even eligible to work a camp for free in 95-degree weather. They pissed off the wrong cat. So, no, forget it. I sat at home and watched the Bruins, watched hockey, watched basketball. Addicted to all that shit. Speaking of which, I have to get into the Donald Sterling. Even though it's a football show, forget it. I have to get this off my chest. First of all, of course, Donald Sterling had to go. Talk about a layup for Adam Silver. They've been making Adam Silver sound like he's, JFK, for Christ's sake. Adam Silver comes out and suspends Donald Sterling for life and fines him $2 million. It's amazing to me that, that David Stern, rather, ends up getting a free pass on all this. Nobody talks about David Stern, although they knew for about 28 years that Donald Sterling was nothing but a scumbag piece of shit, but they let him go the whole time. And now it finally comes out he's banging a girl 50 years younger than he is. And she goes out and records what this guy's saying. And now all of a sudden they're going to get rid of him. And they make it sound like Adam Silver did something that was so special. Are you kidding me? That was the easiest decision he had to make. He looks like a hero for doing something that's obvious. And he can fight it all he wants, but the bottom line is the NBA is like McDonald's. It's a franchise. If McDonald's wants to pull a franchise from somebody who's not pulling their weight, if somebody has a McDonald's franchise in Peoria, Illinois, and it's not up to McDonald's standards, they can pull that shit at any time. So to think that Donald Sterling being able to get rid of taking Donald Sterling's franchise from him is really something stepping up. It's not. It's an easy decision to make. And the funny thing is, at the end of the day, Donald Sterling's going to end up making like $1 billion off selling the Clippers. Time and place, he got in when the NBA, when the getting was good, pre-Magic, pre-Bird. And now this guy, he's being shunned. He's a pride, but he's going to make $1 billion. You need to legislate against assholes. The good news is guys like that are going away. And these franchises, nowadays, they do such a more thorough job of filtering out these guys. But David Stern knew the whole time all types of accusations against Donald Sterling. Like I just read the other day, shit, he hated everybody. He hated everybody that wasn't rich. He went out and he didn't want to sign J.J. Redick this summer because J.J. Redick was white. He didn't want to sign a white boy and give him all that money, which I can understand. But, guys like that, they don't think like the average Joe. 81-year-old guy who has $1 billion, they think they can do whatever they want. It's almost gotten into a political discussion. It's like guys like Mike Ditka, whom I have respect for, I guess, but coming out this week saying that the NCAA football players are a bunch of crybabies. Why don't they go out and get jobs like I did? Why don't they go out and get a summer job if they want money? Ridiculous statement. It's that conservative notion. I'm middle of the road politically. If you listen to the show, I believe in both ethoses. But what Mike Ditka doesn't understand is these kids can't get jobs. It's a full-time job what they have. And the NCAA this week now have out of this whole thing coming up with unions and players' rights, the NCAA just instituted this week that they need that 8 hours a week on top. They're allowed to meet with players and have mandatory workouts in the summer at 8 hours a week. That was something that never happened before. They just slipped that in. It's amazing how the NCAA gets away with all this stuff, and people have turned it into a political issue. They turn it into, they're getting a college education. These dudes ain't ready for college. A guy like Dorial Green Beckham from Missouri just thrown off the team because of multiple incidences. He threw a girl down the stairs. These guys been arrested multiple times for marijuana. Practically legal in it's going to be half the state's going to be legalizing it in the next few months anyways, but they can take a guy like Dorial Beckham Green. What does he do? What does he do now? He probably goes to Canada or somewhere because the NFL doesn't have a minor league system, which is a shame. Everybody claims NCAA football players and NCAA basketball players need an education, but what about football? What about hockey? What about golf? What about tennis? All those sports where they have a lot less incidences of people acting up compared to NCAA football, NCAA basketball, nothing. They don't make them do anything. If they're 16, they can sign them. But they put these guys, they put them in a hornet's nest. When you force kids to go to college, you put them in a hornet's nest. Just so much trouble, so much booze and drugs and cheap sex going on in these colleges. It's actually, I would make the argument the other way. That it's probably worse for these kids to go to college because they're not there to get educated, most of them. What's the NCAA graduation rate at this point? It's less than 50%. And the transfer rules are ridiculous. You get into a bad situation. You say you sign into a school when you're 18, you go to this college, and you don't like it, and now you need to transfer. You got to sit out a whole freaking year. A year where you can go out and, prove your worth. But you have to get in this caste system, this feudal system of making players go to college for a number of years. It's ridiculous. I don't know. I'm just pounding my head against a wall even talking about this shit, but that's what I do. NFL draft finally upon us. And there's no way I'm going to sit here and do a mock draft. That is the most futile exercise trying to do a mock draft. People have no idea. It's amazing. You sit and go on Twitter nowadays, and there are so many people just making money off doing these mock drafts. The Mel Kipers are everywhere. I guess it's no different than some jackhole like me going on doing a podcast. Same thing. because anybody can do it nowadays. Now all these people are just guys got to be making a living, making these mock drafts. And I've watched so many damn mock drafts since the pushing back of the draft, which is one of the worst ideas I've ever heard in my life. Matter of fact, there was a poll that just came out. 96.33% of all people, according to Pro Football Talk's poll, prefer the draft in April on Saturday like they used to do. Now, they put it on Thursday night, which living out here, it's at 5 o'clock. Look, there is a bunch of benefits with sports being on earlier. But there's a bunch of detractions as well. 5 o'clock, shit, people are still working. They're getting home. They're doing things. Now you missed the first 10 picks, which are really the most interesting picks of the whole draft, especially this year where it's so up in the air. Now you do it on Thursday nights. And now as a kick in the balls, too, as a school teacher myself, I get a fucking open house. Open house in May. Just randomly on this day, I got to go to an open house and miss the first the first round of the draft anyway. Just going to record it and just kind of ditch out early, I guess. I don't know what else to do with that situation. Just going to have to find a way to put it on record and shut my phone off and not listen to anything. Poor me. Poor me. Oh, this draft, though, is something. Yeah, it goes back and forth. What do the Texans do? All right, I've said it 1,000 times, broken record. The Houston Texans would be fools not to pick Johnny Manziel number 1 at this point. Forget it. Pick him number 1 and let the franchise go where it may. You're going to be the most popular franchise in the world, at least for a year or two. So what are you going to do? You're going to pick a guy like Clowney or Khalil Mack, which are really great football players. And then maybe get a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo, who's a good football player as well, in the second round. Hey, forget it. Take the short thing as far as becoming a relevant franchise. And Houston Texans would battle Dallas instantly, the way Johnny Manziel is loved in Texas. They can instantly become a factor, but we'll see. The mock draft's ridiculous. I don't even know why anybody would spend their time doing it, because on average, there's 20-something trades in the first round, or the first couple rounds. I forget the exact number is over the last few years. So how can you even present that? You have no idea what people are going to trade in and out of, what team's going to pick where. But there's a whole franchise on it. You gotta respect Mel Kiper, even though you got the, who the hell is Mel Kiper back in the 90s? It wasn't Bill Polian. I don't know who was running the Colts at the time. Who the hell is Mel Kiper? It's true, but Mel Kiper started a cottage industry of being able to just exploit this shit. Because people want to be able to tell the future, but that's never going to happen. You're just going to sit back and take it. Like Bobby Knight said. Well, I don't want to talk about that. What else we got going on in the draft? We got 4 Shaquilles in this draft, 4 Shaqs in this draft. It makes about sense. Shaquille O'Neal blew up in about 1993. So those Shaqs are about 20, 21 years old at this point. If Clowney gets taken number 1, it'll be the second South Carolina player taken number 1. George Rogers taken by the 81 Saints, which didn't do anything for them. I don't know. I've never seen a player so dead set on being taken number 1 like Clowney is. But you're not going to go wrong with a guy like Clowney, I guess. I mean, he's not going to be a complete bust. Although, in the last, 20 years, as far as guys being taken in the first round, defensive players being taken in the first round, it's hit or miss. What do you got? Guys like Mario Williams, who I guess was somewhat of a hit. Then you got guys like Dan Wilkinson being taken as number 1 player in the draft, defensive tackle. He was average at best. Played a few years, didn't really do much. Guys like Trev Albert for the Colts, who ended up being that guy. Who the hell is Mel Kiper? No, I don't think Trev Albert played more than 2 years in the league. But it's amazing. I just think you take that guy that can make that difference. But enough of that about that. I've talked so much about Johnny Manziel over the years. Over the year. That's just a moot point. How about next year's draft? Well, the year after, you got a guy like Jameis Winston. What the hell is Jameis Winston thinking? Shoplifting crab legs this past week. You know, he's already had enough smoke. And like I said before, there was a smoke, there's fire. It's obviously Florida State and the powers that be in Tallahassee buried this issue. But then you go out, you would think he would be like, okay, I got away with one. Not saying he raped this woman or anything, but he got away with something. At least he was unscathed, ended up winning a national championship, pitching on a baseball team. Went out and stole crab legs. What the fuck? I've been a poor guy myself. There's been years where I don't make any money. Still don't make any money as a school teacher. The last thing I would do is go out and steal crab legs. Talk about red flags being put up. Suspended indefinitely, Jameis Winston ended up being reinstated in the baseball team yesterday. Now he's pitching, I think, today. Or he pitched yesterday or something like that. He's in uniform. I would not take Jameis Winston with their first pick. But next year at this time, we will be saying the same thing. Actually, I think Winston's probably got another year or two before he even comes out. Speaking of quarterbacks making bad decisions, Colin Kaepernick out preaching today how he's learned so much from this incident. Basically what happened with Kaepernick is they were partying. He was partying with a member of the Seattle Seahawks, which kind of tells you really, you know, these guys don't care. If they're in the league, they're all part of the brotherhood. They had a girl back in the hotel room. Evidently, they were taking shots. Her claim. I don't know why she would just make something like this up, but due process, we'll see. Every time she took a shot, she had to take a bong hit, which is marijuana usage, in case you don't know. And she went into the bathroom with Kaepernick and didn't come out for a while. Now Kaepernick, 3 weeks later, is saying he's changed his ways. He's learned so much from this. I don't know. We'll see. I'll see how much money he ends up getting. And he's asking for like $18 million a year. We'll see. I don't know. I don't want to throw out the T word because anytime you call somebody a thug nowadays, you're instantly accused of being a racist because a thug is supposedly, according to Richard Sherman, code word for calling somebody the N-word. But I don't know. Colin Kaepernick was raised by white parents, so I don't think he's anything. But I don't know. We'll see what happens with that story. Another one. How about Chad Johnson trying to play in the Canadian League, which I think players should, like I said earlier, have an opportunity to play in the Canadian League. I think there should be some kind of joint union where NFL sends players to Canada. If Canada will have them, they're very stubborn, though. Speaking of which, watching the Bruins play the Canadians, I understand they're stubborn. Blame Canada. But you're going to have guys, you should have guys go to Canada. But Chad Johnson's trying to go to Canada, and they won't let him because of his criminal record, although supposedly that's working out. But Chad Johnson was just on some radio program the other day talking about, hey, you know, I'm married. That doesn't mean I can't have other women. He said, look at Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was hoeing. That's what he said on the air. He said Martin Luther King was hoeing. Hey, you know what? I talked about Martin Luther King Day, and Martin Luther King was not the image that people like to present him to be. But shit, that's an interesting rationale to be able to throw out that Martin Luther King was hoeing. So I'm Chad Johnson. I could be hoeing too. He headbutted his girlfriend. Of all things. You know, look at a guy. Look, it sounds like I'm defending a guy like Donald Sterling. Donald Sterling's a piece of shit. So isn't Chad Johnson. It's one thing to be an 80-year-old man who's probably demented anyways. I think it'd be great if Donald Sterling ended up claiming he has dementia or something. They always said he has cancer and his days are limited. Saying, I was demented. I was drunk. Not to mention that his girlfriend was probably having sex with other guys. You know how guys get. Jealous rage. This is more Donald Sterling defense. No, not trying to. But a guy like freaking Chad Johnson saying that he can go have affairs with multiple women and headbutt a woman. Shit. I don't know how guys like that anybody would even offer him a job. Patriots did. Patriot way. Speaking of the Patriot way, Tom Brady, man, he does everything in his power to make guys who pull for the Patriots, diehard Patriot fans, not like him. Shows up to the Kentucky Derby the other day in some ridiculous freaking hat. Tom Brady, I've never seen somebody so style conscious as Tommy is. Some ridiculous wooden hat or whatever it is. It shows up in a hot air balloon to end up going to the Kentucky Derby and just makes a fool of himself with all these pictures. I'd rather have Tom Brady get drunk and do something stupid than go to the Kentucky Derby and show up in a hot air balloon with this dumb hat on. Patriot way. Aaron Hernandez again, back in the news, beating the hell out of somebody in jail, telling them when he gets out, told the security guy, when he gets out, it's rat-a-tat-tat, 187. Oh, Aaron. And they just let him have free reign, the Patriots. They didn't even handed him the football. They handed a tight end the football. It's absurd what these guys think that they so entitled to get away with everything. And then the opposite end of the spectrum, you got the Buffalo Jills, the cheerleading group for the Buffalo Bills. They make about, what was it, less than $50 a game. Talked about this before with the Raiders. Buffalo Jills have a whole set. All these cheerleaders have this whole set of rules which they have to abide by. Otherwise, they're gone. They don't have the privilege of being an NFL cheerleader. They had to go through what was called the jingle test. They had to jump up and down in front of the cheerleading coach to see if certain parts jiggled. And if certain parts jiggled, they only had a week or two to get rid of the jiggling parts, or they would be thrown off. It's amazing. The NFL is a real capsule of free market enterprise. They pay people whatever they want, and they'll make people do whatever they want, including the cheerleaders. Same thing with the NCAA. Shit, I worked as an assistant coach, and I worked in quotes, because it was easy. Coaching football is not that difficult, as much as they try to make you believe. I'd work 70 hours a week all season, 40 hours in the off season. And when I worked at Holy Cross, the College of the Holy Cross, and I worked at Penn State, I had the tax returns, I was looking at them, talking about that with my dad. I made about $16,000 at Penn State for a full year, working 70 hours plus a week. And at Holy Cross, I probably made $10,000 a year. And they treat you like slaves. You know, that's some powerful terminology, but you get my point. You do whatever they say. Just to get that chance that you could actually move up into another class of coach, to be a Division I coach, to get that position coaching job where those guys make $200,000 a year, $200,000 a year to coach position. I think Jackoff can coach a position. You got the right players there. Oh, you put them through a couple bag drills, through them a couple ball drills. And because they know the right people, they end up getting these jobs and they make tons of money. And their answer is, you don't like it? Go work somewhere else. Well, I did. I ended up going to high school and, making a comfortable living. But nobody even blows a whistle on these guys. They let these guys get away with everything. Jim Brown tried to blow the whistle the other day, talking about the ridiculousness of the system. He's absolutely correct. You got a system that's making hundreds of millions of dollars, yet they don't want to provide health care for players. If a guy gets hurt, they don't care. Throw him to the wolves. Oh, he's getting a free education. Guys like Dick are saying, oh, well, we got a free education. Yeah, great. Be interesting to see. They took that Northwestern, trying to get the union in. Is union the answer? Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. But hey, let's put it out there. But I was reading an article saying that this one school that is really looking at that closely is USC. Because it's a private school. It has to be a private school to be able to be able to bring that up. And they're saying USC players are looking at this Northwestern situation with big ears. They're looking at this situation. They have interest in doing it themselves. That would be phenomenal if USC ended up with the players' union. Because that's the thing that gets lost in this whole discussion. They're not looking for money per se. They're looking for medical benefits. yeah, they get trainers and doctors, but if they get seriously hurt, they get it for a year or two, but as soon as they're done with the school, they're out. They're on their own. They don't have any benefits whatsoever. They're looking for a fund to be able to provide these guys benefits because they're putting their lives on the line. The thing that just gets lost in the shuffle, people putting their lives on the line. Look at the guy there from Jacksonville the other day. What's his name? Russell Allen. He had a stroke in the middle of a game and kept playing. He has since had to retire. The NFL is going to take care of him a little bit, but the NCAA is not. If that shit happened in the NCAA, they'll give him a little bit of, concussion test and this and that. But as soon as he's out of school, he's done for life. They're saying this guy on a routine play, Russell Allen took on a center and ended up hitting him. And now he has a hole in his brain. And now he has, permanent brain damage for the rest of his life. Absurd. Shit will drive me nuts thinking about it. So I try not to think about it other than this 1 hour I get every week. Speaking of dying, Earl Morrall, longtime quarterback in the NFL. Guy played for 21 years in the NFL. Be interesting to see if once the season comes around, they do any type of tribute to a guy like this. Earl Morrall was a quarterback. Little known secret, but not really anybody who pays attention. The 1972 Dolphins, the undefeated team. Earl Morrall started 9 games for that team. That Dolphin team. He also was the quarterback in that Colts-Jets Super Bowl, the famous Joe Namath game, which I actually watched because I'm an NFL Network junkie. I watched that game. It is amazing how bad the athletes were at that point, how bad the game was, the way they played. Guys like Earl Morrall and then Johnny Unitas came in. They looked awful. You stick a guy like Michael Vick in that offense, they would look like world beaters. They would be the greatest players of all time if they let black players play quarterback in the 60s, which they didn't. So all those owners should have been thrown out. It's amazing how far we've come as a society, how different things are from the 60s that they are to today. Back then, I bet you all the owners in the NFL teams were racist. That's why none of them put black quarterbacks. Those guys back in the 50s and 60s, I mean, they look like, they look like 45-year-old men with their high tops smoking cigarettes on the sideline, just unathletic. It was prevalent. That was the way that things were done back then. Speaking of the Buffalo Bills, I don't even know if I spoke about the Buffalo Bills, but I'm going to speak about the Buffalo Bills. I'm trying to create a segue. Buffalo Bills are being sued for $2.5 million, and they lost because they were sending out text messages. They had a sign-up thing for fans. If you signed up for this particular service, you were going to get text messages, exclusive Bills text messages. But in the contract it said you were not to get more than 5 text messages a week. And one of the fans got 10 text messages a week. So he sued the Buffalo Bills, and the Bills are paying out. The Bills are going to put $2.5 million to debit cards. They're going to be given out, well, not to one person, but distributed to anybody who jumps in on this class action lawsuit that proves that they signed up on this website. $2.5 million they're paying out. And they're going to give debit cards to these fans to spend on merchandise. Lawsuits. Ruining everything. Anywhere you look, people just suing. Speaking of which, San Francisco 49er fan, just sued the league for $50 million. Claiming economic discrimination because San Francisco fans weren't allowed to buy tickets to the San Fran-Seattle game in Seattle. You were only allowed to buy a game on your credit card if you were from Washington, Oregon, Montana, Idaho, Alaska, Hawaii, British Columbia, Canada, or Alberta, Canada. Other than that, if you bought a ticket using your credit card, it would be void because Seattle didn't want non-Seahawk fans at that game. $50 million under the Federal Consumer Fraud Act because they were stacking the deck against Seattle fans. Isn't that amazing? You sue somebody for $50 million. The way that shit works nowadays, he's at least going to get $1 million. It's amazing how they let this stuff go on. And how the NFL is just so blind and how they just do such foolish things day in and day out. Like pushing that draft back because they had Radio City Music Hall. They said there was an Easter performance that weekend before, and they weren't allowed to do it, which is shit because Goodell has already come out and said that, well, we're looking into pushing this draft back anyways because it gives us, if the people talking about the NFL for a couple more weeks, then it's a good thing. Fucking A, it's not a good thing. Drive you nuts just listening to these pundits talking about these mock drafts. And I still watch them, but I've said my piece on that. Aldon Smith just signed an extension, a 5th year, even though San Fran came out in the last 2 weeks and said, oh, we're not going to re-sign him in that 5th year. Yeah, they went out and did it. For like $9 million a year. Aldon Smith's coming back after making his fake bomb threat at LAX. Signed for a $9.75 million option after making the LAX threat and shooting off assault rifles at a party this past offseason, but they're going to bring him back because, well, quite frankly, Aldon Smith can rush the passer. It's funny, in an article I read this week saying that Aldon Smith was a class act at number 7, and one of the reasons they took him is because he was such a solid character guy. Well, that's what you got. It's getting to the point, though, there's some red flags being put up because in 2011, out of 32 first-round picks, only 11 of them have signed the contract for the 5th-year option. Some people are claiming collusion, like collusion couldn't happen between these NFL owners. But you got guys like, Cam Newton, Patrick Peterson, Robert Quinn, Pouncey. A lot of these guys, they're not picking up these options, which goes to show how the draft is such an inexact science because after this, first couple months of all this bullshit with these guys, they throw them away. As soon as they don't have any value to them, they throw them away and they start afresh. And then they fire their GMs, they fire their head coach, and they try to make everybody believe, oh, we're starting anew. Bullshit. They're just freaking trying to limit what they're paying on salary. Even though they have to pay 89% of their salary against the cap to players, they're still finding ways. Christian Ponder just got his decline his 5th year. It'll be fascinating to see what a team like the Vikings does, which next week's show is going to be infinitely more interesting because we can actually sit here and talk about what teams drafted and what teams didn't. But this draft is so deep. There's so many players in this draft. And I think you're going to get that from here on out. You got guys specializing more and more, especially compared to, I don't know if you watched the Caught in the Draft specials they have on NFL Network talking about all these guys that would just bust. So many of them bust. Now it's become so specialized. Kids are training 14, 15 years old. Specialized training. They can identify people much more than they could back then. And now these guys are, it's the evolution of it. And you got about 12 wide receivers that are definitely difference makers in the next year or two. And then you got guys coming out like Terrence West from Towson State. Guy ran for 2,500 yards and 42 touchdowns this year. 2,500 yards and 42 touchdowns this year. Somebody's going to take that guy. Someone's going to make him a player. See, it's funny the way the running back has been de-emphasized. And I've talked about that before. And I do think you can get running backs lower. But you got a guy like Carlos Hyde. See where he goes. Guy averaged over almost 7.5 yards per carry at Ohio State. I would be shocked if he goes in the first round. Who knows? Or a guy like Derek Carr. Although Derek Carr is claiming that he's got guarantees he's going to be picked in the 20s. Guy led the NCAA in completions, in yardage, in touchdowns. But funny, people look at him and it's easy talk radio things to say, oh, he's David Carr's brother, and David Carr was a bust. But yeah, I mean, look how much younger Derek Carr is. Talk about a guy who's just been groomed his whole life. You see the mistakes your brother makes, and you end up not making those same mistakes. And he's like 10 years younger than his brother or something like that. I would think a guy like Derek Carr would be a really good draft pick. But then a guy like Blake Bortles, I like Blake Bortles is a good player, but I was watching that Path to the Draft on NFL Network. What a stiff. I got about personality in my shoes. But they're worried that Johnny Manziel has too much personality. But they're saying Blake Bortles doesn't have enough personality. And I still think there are backup quarterbacks in the league that are still viable. A guy like Matt Barkley, if he had stayed at USC, they'd be talking about him in the top 5 right now. Now he's just dying on the depth chart. He's not playing in Philadelphia. He won't even play next year. It's time and place. It's opportunity. You know, you got a guy like Barkley. If he had stayed, which they try to make these kids stay in college, if he had stayed, he would have made much more money. Ended up being on a team that he's actually going to play on. Now he's stuck in a team that he's probably not going to play on for at least 2 or 3 more years. With the way the rookie contracts are now, it's all tipped inside on the favor of the owners. Ryan Mallett, stuck at the Patriots. This is a guy that everyone was speaking highly of. He was screwing up all types of things when he was coming out of the draft. Shit, it's been 3 years. You would think the guy's had his shit together somewhat. At least he hasn't been partying with Aaron Hernandez the whole time. And you get a guy like Jameis Winston, you know, just keeps fucking up. A team like Florida State, though, is always so talented. Shit, last year in the draft, Florida State ended up having 13 guys go in the draft, which was the number one by far. So it was only a matter of time before Florida State turned around and ended up winning the whole thing, which they did. More draft facts. 12 of the last 16 first picks overall were quarterbacks. How many of those guys busted? How many of those guys aren't playing really well? Your Brandon Whedons of the world. 27 trades in the last draft. Oh, these are the 3 guys I was looking at. In my notes, the 3 guys I was looking at, the first defensive player, number 1 overall in the last 20 years. There's only been 3 guys taken number 1. Mario Williams, Courtney Brown, and Dan Wilkinson. Don't like those odds. You can find defensive players because defensive players are more gritty. You can find guys with the will. You know, and I wouldn't take any of those. If they redid all those drafts, none of those guys would go number 1 overall. Great steals in the NFL draft. Got guys like John Lynch, Hall of Famer, 3rd round out of Stanford. Jared Allen, 4th round out of Idaho State. Andre Reed, 4th round out of Kutztown State in Pennsylvania. Props. Chris Carter, 4th round out of Ohio State. Kurt Warner, not drafted at all. Shannon Sharp, 7th round pick. Terrell Davis. Even Joe Montana, 3rd round. Of course, obviously Tom Brady. Anybody likes to talk about that one as a guy who slipped through. All types of guys slip through. I don't even know why we sit here and watch all this shit. I would think, well, there's another one. Herschel Walker came out this week and said he could still play in the NFL and he's 50 years old. I would love to see it. I would love to see at some point in the season, the NFL says, you know what? You can add 3 players to your roster. It won't count against your 52 as long as they're over the age of 40. Wouldn't that make some interest? Wouldn't that generate some interest? You got some old timers. You can add them you can bring back some NFL legends. Bring them back. Doesn't even matter. You don't even have to, they don't even count against your roster space. I'd love to see Herschel Walker carry the ball at 50. Talk about generating interest in the league. Well, shit, bring back Ickey Woods. Have him run down there and cover kickoffs. That'd be great. Bring Deion Sanders in. We're going to bring Deion Sanders in week 8 because we're allowed to. Let him go lock down the slot receiver. Should be after the age of 40, free roster spot. If you want in and then someone's willing to pay you, let them come on in. Of course, they'll never do stuff like that. Why would they? Joe Paterno statue going up outside the Tavern, a place I used to frequent when I worked at State College. Kickstarter program raised over $500,000. $500,000 to put a statue of old Joe up there. Why not, right? It's on private ground now, and that stuff is going away. Joe's going to be brought back into the good graces of Penn State within the next year or two. That's the way we work nowadays. After a year or two, we have selective outrage. It all depends. It depends who's making a big deal of it. If TMZ's making a big deal of it, then it's a big deal. That's why Donald Sterling all of a sudden became a racist, even though the lawsuits and all the stuff that went against him in the last 10 years, 15 years. He was calling players. He was bringing ladies into the locker room saying, look at these gorgeous black bodies. But everyone knew it. People have selective memory. We forget about this stuff. Speaking about selective memory, it's not really a segue, but I guess it is. NFL schedule came out finally. And the NFL was so pretentious about it, so high and mighty about it. We'll release the schedule when we want to release the schedule. They wouldn't tell anybody when they were going to release the schedule, but they released it about 10 days ago now. First game of the year, Green Bay at Seattle, September 4th. So we have to sit through some kind of pseudo country star coming out and saying Stars and Stripes forever. We have to watch these friggin' terrible opening monologues by these ex-players. Green Bay's a team, though, you got to look out for. There's no way Seattle's going to be back to where they were. But I digress. 3 games in the UK. 3 fucking games in London, England, and not one goddamn game in Los Angeles. 2 of those games start at 6:30 in the morning, Pacific Standard Time, 9:30 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. I think it's going to make a whole. You're going to see a bunch of people moving to the Pacific Standard Time zone because they realize that 9:30 in the morning football is outstanding. So maybe that's why they're doing it. They're putting all those games on so people. It's great waking up in the morning, making some eggs, some bacon, some coffee, and then watching these games. 3 damn games. They got 3 damn games on Thanksgiving as well, which I like. Lions, of course, Bears, Eagles, Cowboys. Be a fun one. And then the nightcapper. Got to give credit where credit is due. Seattle, San Fran, and a nightcapper on Thanksgiving night, where half of us have already fallen victim to tryptophan and drinking 15 beers and having 3 pieces of pumpkin pie. We have to deal with it. But hey, it's a marquee game putting it on Thanksgiving Day. They never do stuff like that. It's about damn time. Whew. Man, things are freaking flying by. Mike Vick changing numbers again. Was going to have number 8 with the Jets. Now he's number 1. He should be number 1. There is no way that Mike Vick loses out to Geno Smith in that quarterback battle, if you will. But there's no way Mike Vick stays healthy. But again, the Jets are going to be tough. They got 2 quality quarterbacks, and everyone likes to shit on Geno Smith. But Geno Smith was a damn rookie last year, and Geno Smith can throw. They're going to find a way to get both those cats on the field at the same time. Trouble. And the defense is great. So as much as I don't want Sexy Rexy to do well, he is going to do well. Last thing I'm going to leave you with, because I'm sweating my balls off because it's 150 degrees in here. Peyton went out and visited Derek Jeter today because Derek and I, growing up in the same profession era, we're both old timers now. So he was out there, Peyton Manning. If there wasn't another reason to dislike him for myself, there's another one. He shows up there in his Yankee gear. Giving props to Derek Jeter. As I said, the only thing I like about Derek Jeter, a couple things. One, guy's 40 years old, one of the greatest, probably the greatest offensive shortstop of all time. Can make that argument. Derek Jeter's 40 years old, never been married. Like Derek Jeter couldn't be married whenever he wanted to at any time. I appreciate that. I appreciate guys like Derek Jeter, George Brett. Yeah, they go through the whole year. And they're committed to one team. They don't have somebody pulling at their ear, telling them where the career is going to go. Derek Jeter will go out and marry some supermodel in the next year or two. So, like George Brett went out and just get the hottest chick. Doesn't matter. Age doesn't matter with guys like that. You kidding me? You tell me Derek Jeter couldn't pull some 20-year-old. This is who he is. But he went through his whole career. He doesn't have some woman in his head telling him you need to sign with this team. You need to get chase the money. You need to get out. Someone get into a fight with the management. So that's a silver lining. Well, I don't know why everybody says I'm negative. Not negative. Good for Derek Jeter. Ended up, kind of the non-norm, but Peyton just wanted to say hi to Derek. And then Darius Thomas coming out the other day saying that, Seattle didn't do anything that we didn't expect. We just didn't make the plays. Oh, awesome. No shit. That's the way all games go. If you didn't snap the ball over the head of Peyton in the first play of the game, yeah, you might have had a shot. You might have had a shot on something like that. But, Seattle's just loaded with talent. And Seattle went out and got Jeff Island, the guy who was ostracized from Miami. It's the way it goes. It's not who you know. It's not what you know. It's who you know. Jeff Island is now like the assistant to the GM. Even though we got ran out of Miami for all that shenanigans with Richie, imagine, I can only imagine, be about week 4 until somebody signs Richie Incognito. Wouldn't it be great if Richie Incognito signs with the team that Johnny Manziel ends up being on? A freaking circus show. But guys like Jeff Island, once they get in, they're in. They're in for life. Somebody's going to hire them at $120,000 a year to come in and give average opinions on average everything. Last thing, I know I already said last thing, is a great movie out. I can't wait to see it. I'm trying to get the producer of this movie in. It's called Don't Quit, the Joe Roth story. For those listeners who don't know who Joe Roth was, he was a quarterback at Cal Berkeley. Ended up being diagnosed before his senior year that he had melanoma, which kind of touches home to a light-skinned brother like myself who's out in the sun all the time, and I have to get something removed. Not melanoma. I don't want to have any of my fans getting a tizzy, just that basal cell shit where they rip out like nothing. But this guy, Joe Roth, ended up having melanoma before his senior year. 1977, things were way different. They said they ended up getting it out. Didn't get it out. Did a biopsy at the end of his senior year in 1976. He came in like 5th in the Heisman. After going to the Heisman Trophy Award ceremony, he was told he had 90 days to live. A 22-year-old kid, 90 days to live. Goes out and plays in the Japan Bowl, which at that time was, the marquee game for seniors. Ended up playing in the Japan Bowl. Goes 5 for 6 for 75 yards. 30 years later, dies. And a guy they projected to be possibly the number 1 pick overall. Imagine if that shit happened nowadays. How inundated you would be with everything. How players everywhere would be wearing Joe Roth patches. And he'd be doing all types of tributes to Joe Roth. But this guy just, nothing. It was a sign of the times back then. They just didn't. Life goes on. The beat goes on. Got to see it. Don't quit. The Joe Roth story. Ended up playing out here in a theater at Huntington Beach. All right, what else do I have? Nothing. I got to get out of here. I got to go take a piss, and I'm sweating my balls off. That's it. I will be back next week with a full draft recap. Better than a draft. It's better than looking at my crystal ball and trying to figure out what's going on in the draft. Better telling you what teams improved and what teams didn't. That's it. Follow us at Twitter at Hot Yards LA. Please, we had Icky Woods on last week. I know you guys listen to that show. Follow the Javante Woods Foundation. It's a great foundation. 11 kids die a day. 11 kids die a day from asthma. It's a worthwhile foundation. He's a great guy. Came on the show. That's about it. I will be here next week with bells on.
Pistol grip, pump on my neck at all times. your shit, but they can't be fucking with mine.